I'm JY. Welcome to episode 2 of my Spanish D.O.P series about Picota cherries. And today I'm going to go through Picota cherry vinegar and a few other things that I made with my Picota cherries. I have been dying to make vinegar for so long. I bought a juicer, I bought an aerating bubble pump for fish tanks, and then I left Australia for Spain and I didn't bring any of that with me, which in retrospect is pretty silly because of course I'm the same person. And anyway, luckily a few weeks ago I stumbled upon this recipe for vinegar by Alan Burgo, otherwise known as the Forager Chef, and it looked so simple that I was like, oh my god, I don't need to buy a juicer, I don't need to buy an air pump, at least for now, and we can see how it goes because it only uses fruit scraps, living vinegar, water and sugar. Here is the first vinegar that I've made, and so I figured I would make another one and then show that process to you today. The best part about this recipe is that you can make it with whatever fruit scraps you have around. So the skins, fruits, pulp, etc. as long as you have the living vinegar. But as you can see, it has like the bits in it, I suppose, of the mother, and you need to have that, otherwise you won't be able to actually start the fermentation process properly. This is just a glass jar from IKEA. I just have some white granulated sugar, caster sugar, and then just tap water is fine. I also have a wooden chopstick for stirring, a rubber band for tying around the top of the jar, and these are actually these really lovely little cotton cloths from Muji. I will put a picture here of what they actually are, but you can use cheesecloth, tea towels, as long as the weave is dense enough that you won't get fruit flies, etc. 450 grams of Picota cherries. So I actually learned that there are 4 varieties of cherries that make up Picota cherries as well. I didn't mention this in my first video because it was just probably too much information, but in fact there are 4 different varieties. And as you can see, these ones have a more yellow flesh than the dark wine flesh of the first ones that I put in my video. You literally put all of these things in a jar together and then just mix. 100 grams of sugar because I have a 1.8 liter jar. The reason I said is because I have for the first time found ants in my house, so I have to be very careful about having sugar around because I'm Australian and I know that you really cannot be too careful when you have ants starting to show up in your house in the middle of summer. You're going to wipe that down because I'm a good Australian. So this is about 1 liter of water. Now I'm going to stir that until the sugar mostly dissolves. And 15 milliliters of, it's still not fully dissolved, but it's not a big deal. It'll dissolve over time as well. So then you need about 15 milliliters of the vinegar. This is just apple cider vinegar, which you can pretty much find at your local supermarket or fancy supermarket. Perfect. Cherries, last of all, just pit and then also mush up your cherries. My understanding is that if you then also add juice to the mix, then the fruit flavor will be stronger. So in this case, all I've done is pit the cherries, just like this, with my favorite cherry pitter. I'm going to straight into the mix. That's all in. Can give it a nice little stir again. There's always a reason I didn't do cooking videos, and it's because it's very clear how bad I am at stuff. For example, even just putting my stuff in a way that's not going to fall off and lead to an ant catastrophe. So cover it with this cloth, just at the top with a nice strong rubber band. And that's it. Try to just stir it every day, which is what I did before, and then remove the solids and then keep it so it will continue to ferment. I tasted it every time I stirred it. It tastes sweet in the beginning and then it tastes kind of alcoholic. You're like, yeah. I mean, depending on if you like weird tasting alcohol, and then it turns into the more familiar vinegar taste, which is very delicious. So it's interesting how easily you can work out where it is in the particular process. I have also made a variety of other vinegars, pear vinegar and also a red plum vinegar. The other great thing about this recipe is that after you've strained the solids, you will still have all the cherries that came out of the mix, and you can use that to make like a sweet and sour, like an agrodolce condiment, or sauce out of it. The condiment goes really well with cheese if you want to keep it more solid, or if you want to make a sauce, it goes super well with like duck or pork or probably even carrots and sweet potatoes, anything that kind of would go well with cherry. You take the cherries that you've strained, you add some brown sugar, lemon juice, and maybe a herb or two. I use some thyme, but you could use rosemary as well, and a little bit of sea salt. So then you just cook that down until it gets to the consistency that you want, like either more solid if you want to have it as a condiment for cheese, or further down in like a more sauce-like texture if you want a sauce. The first thing that I made with the vinegar was actually the thing that I had been making the vinegar for. I was always obsessed with this reduced raspberry vinegar that James Scott used to make at Lumi for a dessert there. It was amazing. And I figured that now that I made a cherry vinegar, I could reduce it and use it in the same way. So I did. And the reduced cherry vinegar is also super easy. You just warm up a bit of the vinegar and also some white sugar. You cook it down until it's the consistency of like a thick syrup, as you can see here. And then once that's done, you let it cool, and then you can swirl it on any kind of dessert that you like. I put it on a froyo with some fresh Picota cherries, and that was perfect. I'll put both of these recipes in on jysfoodadventures.com. And then finally, with the mother that's created from this vinegar process, which is basically this slab that forms on top of the vinegar as you make it. So you can also then put that into leftover wine that you might have, and that will then ferment. It'll go straight from the alcohol stage to ferment into vinegar with the mother. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for another chaotic food adventure at some point. All right, bye for now.